Hello everybody, welcome to High Ground. My name is Tanner, and today we're going to be talking about the conclusion of the 6th Invitational 2023. So we've already talked about most of the bracket here, all of this, and I guess all we have to talk about are these two matches, and these two matches, so 6 of them. And let's actually scroll over so we can see all of it. Right, the top 6 teams, Wolves, G2, Koi, Astralis, Auction, and W7M entered, this final portion of the bracket. They played out their matches, and well, you can see who won in the end. And well, if you're watching the video, you probably know who won. G2 took it down in impressive fashion, 3-1, only dropping the initial pick map. We'll talk about that in a minute. Let's start over here, I suppose. So the loser bracket quarterfinals, there's 2 of them: Wolves versus G2 and Koi versus Astralis. And this one's actually a rematch of earlier in the bracket. Wolves knocked G2 down to the lower bracket, 8-7, 8-7, so really close maps, but still a 2-0. G2 looking for some revenge. I didn't do predictions for any of this, but honestly, I think I would have picked G2 here. And then this one, I don't know if I would have ended up picking Astralis. My heart definitely would have said Astralis. It definitely did. Would I pick them in the end? I don't know. It's not totally clear. Probably I would have, but and would I have picked them over here? Oh, probably. But anyways, that's sort of beside the point. Yeah, G2 take it down 2-1. They get sort of smoked on Bank, but then they smoke them right back on Skyscraper in Oregon. No particularly close maps in the series. No 7-5s, no overtime, none of that. And yeah, G2 send Wolves packing. So Wolves, that's like their best international showing ever. They made top 6 here. They have a couple other top 8 showings, but of course, not only is top 6 better than top 8, but Invitational is a better tournament to do better at than the majors, right? There's 20 teams rather than 16. It's the it's the World Championship, bigger prize pool. Everything makes you want to do better at Invitational, and they did finally show up. Yeah, top 6, losing to their countrymen, and when they lost in upper bracket, it was to Auction. So lost to an NA team, lost to an EU team out of the tournament. And G2 moves on. Koi versus Astralis. This was probably the most exciting match of the whole tournament. I mean, if I was going to tell somebody to watch one back, yeah, there's the grand final and everything. As far as grand finals go, this was probably like one of the least exciting ones we've seen in a long time. It was cool to see G2 win. I mean, I guess I was rooting for them out of the 2, but with no NA team in the grand finals, I just wasn't particularly motivated to care about the result too much. Anyway, Koi versus Astralis, 7-5 for Astralis on the first map, 7-5 for Koi on the second map, and then round 15 comes down to a 1v1 at the very end, and I think it's Forest versus Leon, and Forest takes it down. Yeah, crazy one. Like, if you're gonna watch any match from this tournament, make it this one. Just incredible. The first map ends Shuttle in like a 1v3, gets a triple kill with the TCSG, and yeah, just clutches everywhere, as Astralis has been doing all tournament. J90 dropped 10 clutches in this tournament, which, I mean, that might be the most clutches of any tournament ever. And of course, modern SIs have more matches than a lot of the old tournaments used to, but still 10 clutches is insane. And the number Astralis had, maybe I'll double check it at the end of the video, but just an enormous amount, and they just kept pulling them out. And of course, the number of clutches against them were pretty few and far between. Like, they might have had 3 times as many clutches that they performed versus how many were done against them, maybe even more. I'm not totally sure. But yeah, watch this one back if you haven't. It is a real treat. And then we have G2 versus Astralis. So G2 continues their, I mean, I won't say miracle run. Well, I mean, I guess, yeah, they went through as much as the lower bracket as Astralis did. Astralis seeded straight into it, G2 getting knocked down to it in the first round. So yeah, they were both sort of on miracle runs, but Astralis, they went to 3 maps every time that they played up until this time, and a whole bunch of clutches. And Astralis even had a bunch of matches where their stats were just so much worse than their opponents. I think that was the case here. I think that was definitely the case here. Anyways, both on sort of miracle runs, but G2 pulls it out, and they were close maps, round 15 and round 12, so max overtime, max regulation, but Astralis sent home. Would have loved to have seen a third map at least between the 2, but not to be. So Astralis, I mean, exceeding all expectations. Probably they were certainly the most underrated NA team, but probably just overall the lowest rated coming into the event, because they had a pretty good start to the year, all things like a really good start to the year, and then they really fell off, and a lot of question marks around Spiff, and well, I mean, they showed out. Top 4, nothing to sneeze at. Second highest NA team, and actually two of the top 4 teams being NA teams is cool, but none of the grand finalists being NA teams is less cool if you're a fan of NA. Anyways, going on to the lower, oh no, I'll talk about the upper bracket final first. Yeah, so this one is a little bit crazy. W7M, I mean, I think everybody expected them to crush Oxygen. Well, maybe not crush, but everybody expected W7M to win. A few people went for the underdog pick, went with Oxygen, but 7-1, it looked pretty hopeless for Oxygen. They 7-0'd W7M. I mean, has that ever, okay, W7M used to suck. They probably got 7-0'd back in the day. But with the current roster, or even the current roster, minus Julio plus GDN like they used to have they ever been 7-0'd? I don't know. I mean, maybe they have. I haven't looked exhaustively or anything, but probably, they look like the best team in the world, easily the tournament favorite, and they get 7-0'd on Border, which is a map they were generally pretty good on. I don't actually know the stats nowadays, but when Border was sort of a new map, they sort of revolutionized it with the hold the entire map, play super aggro and win all your gunfights type play style. But then we go to Clubhouse, and Oxygen just came up a little bit short. 7-5 win for W7M. So no overtime or anything, but two absolute smoke fests, and then one slugfest when it came down to Clubhouse and W7M in the winner side of grand finals, to the surprise of pretty much no one. And then Oxygen versus G2. Yeah, Oxygen went out a little bit sad. They lost on Bank, close one, 8-6 in overtime, of course. Then they get 7-0. So Oxygen deals out a 7-0 to W7M, and then they get 7-0 by G2 in their very next match to get sent home. A little bit sad. I mean, third place, the highest NA team at the event. Nothing to be ashamed of, but I mean, you really don't want to go out on the 7-0, right? And then finally, we have the grand final. And yeah, W7M, so their advantage by coming through the upper bracket is getting to choose the veto structure, and two of them are basically just the regular one, and they can choose, if they want to ban first or if their opponents want to ban first. They could, but the third option is just they get to do a pick, and then they do 2 bans, and then they pick from there. But basically they get to pick a map before anyone bans, so they get to presumably pick either their best map or their opponent's worst map or whatever they want to do. They went with Clubhouse, and it worked out. It was still close, 7-5, but then G2 smoked them on Bank, and then a little bit closer on Cafe. And well, you could sort of see where this series was going at this point. This was W7M's map. They were usually really, really good at it, and they lost it here. And then we go to Oregon, and closer still, but no, I mean, G2 take it down 8-6. And we don't get 5 maps in the grand final. We've seen some with a 3-1 scoreline map wins, or something like that, right? Because we used to have map advantage for the upper bracket. So like when SSG fought NIP, and when NIP fought Liquid, but last year it was straight up, was it? I don't remember actually. Empire versus TSM. Was there a map advantage or not? I can't actually remember off the top of my head. Anyways, this one, certainly no map advantage. G2 takes it down, and same as they did 4 years ago with none of the same players, G2 takes it down. But by Fabian being the coach for G2, he has now lifted his 3rd hammer. So I think I might do some follow-up stuff to this. I want to talk about Benjamaster. I want to talk about Fabian, because Benjamaster, because of what happened in this tournament, is perhaps, I think you could maybe consider him the best player in the world at the moment, and depending on how far back you want to look, but something to talk about. And then Fabian, I mean, does this make him the greatest player of all time? Well, player, greatest Rainbow Six Siege entity of all time, because right, it was probably Pengu or Canadian before this, and if Julio had won, then maybe it'd be Julio, but now Fabian being the only person to lift 3 hammers, but one of them was as a coach, so certainly some debate to be had there, so maybe we will debate that sometime. And now for a quick look at some stats, and I just wanted to highlight Benjamaster, I think, most of all. So you'll notice 3rd highest rated player at the event. He actually has the highest kill differential, and I mean, he played more maps than anybody else not on his team, so 30 maps, he does have a little bit of an advantage. If Shaiko had gone deeper, surely he would have set the record there. But yeah, in terms of setting records, he now has the kill record for most kills at any event, and especially at an SI, 323. The previous record was, I think, 289 by Nasket SI 2021. Doki now has 2nd place, getting over 300 kills as well, but not quite the 323 of Benjamaster. And in terms of entry, he got into an absolute ton. I think the 2nd most of anyone at the event, outdone only by Doki, who got, 112, and Benja getting in 95, but both of them only going a little bit positive. I guess it worked out for their team, though. They didn't need to win all of the entry engagements, but they played pretty fast, right? So sometimes maybe they lost their entry engagements, but if they got the refrag, maybe the 4v4 with the ground taken was well worth it, and probably it was in a lot of cases. Maybe something to talk about at another time. KPR not as impressive as Newers and Shaiko. And I mean, if we're talking about the best player in the world at the moment, I mean, you might just have to give the title to Benjamaster. It depends how far back you're looking. I mean, if you want to talk about consistency and whatever, maybe you'd go for another player. But if you actually look at Benja's stats, I don't think overall, I don't think he's ever gone negative in entry or KD except for, I think it was Yanjiping. I think NA or EUL stages 1, 2, and 3, he went positive on KD and entry, and also at the Charlotte Major, and of course at this event. So really, really good track record. I think over the course of the last year, he's like a 1.15 rating overall, some of that on Heroic, and now, I mean, a good chunk of it on G2, only one event, but just so many matches played, so many kills and deaths gotten. And I mean, yeah, that's the biggest thing I wanted to highlight. So if we're talking about like just the top 10 players in the world, the big five before, and maybe even up to now, depending on how you want to look at it, but Grixer, Palu, KZ, it seemed like they were going to absolutely execute any caster for saying Keys instead of KZ because they were real quick to switch up on it. Anyways, those three and Shaiko and Citizen, right? And I mean, if we want to talk about results, maybe it's a little bit different of a question, but if we just want to talk about statistically impressive individual players, it was like those are the big five, and now I think you have to throw in like the likes of Newers, Spoit, Leakafac. I think those are all players that probably have a really good shot at being top 10, if not just obviously top 10, and then maybe a few other players, because I think I only named like 8 or 9 players overall, and you know, Benjamaster, of course, if I didn't just say his name a moment ago. But yeah, the last thing I guess I'll look at is just the stats for the grand final. So let's just go to that. And yeah, if Benja didn't lock in his tournament MVP before this point, yeah, look at this. He dropped almost a 2 KD against W7M in the grand final of SI. Not especially impressive on entry, except for Virtue 8-1 is really, really good considering he's not one of their entries, Benja or Doki. Really split up on the entry engagements, except for Blur only getting the 2, but 8 for Alamau, 9 for Virtue, 13 for Benjamaster and Doki each. And then if you look at W7M, KZ, Keys, whatever, however you want to say it, really wasn't having a very spectacular tournament. I think he ended like 3rd or 4th rated player on his team, but he was the only one putting up a good fight in the grand final. One of only 2 players to go positive on entry, only player to go positive on KD, you know, pretty good KPR, all this stuff. But yeah, I mean, like at Benjamaster stats, this guy's going crazy, and I guess we'll see what they do next. Was this just an absolute fluke for G2? Coming into the event, you know, I and pretty much everybody else underrated them. I had them in like C tier. After I saw them play, I think it was just 2 matches, I put them up into A tier. And the C tier originally, it was either because of I wanted to split up the tier list in a certain way. I had either them or Elevate going into B. Of course, now Elevate looked terrible and G2 won the event, so maybe they were a little bit more deserving. But if you look at their history and whatnot, I think it was a pretty fair placement to have G2. It seemed like Citizen for Benjamaster was a downgrade, but even if maybe you still think Citizen is the better player, I mean, obviously Benjamaster was one of the pieces that this team needed, along with perhaps Fabian, you know, probably doing a lot of work in that regard as well. But at this point, I think I'm just sort of rambling on. Again, I think I want to talk about, well, we'll see if I get around to doing all these videos, but I want to talk about Fabian and the other potential greatest of all times. I want to talk about the best players right now, which I sort of talked about a little bit, and then maybe some other stuff from SI and probably some of the other upcoming stuff, because the esports announcement is supposed to be coming in the next week, and so might have a lot to talk about there, and I suspect that the leagues will be starting up pretty quickly as well, so maybe some stuff to talk about there. Maybe some rankings, because those are always fun, get a lot of views. But anyways, you know, if you got to this point, I just passed 1,200 subs, very cool, but like to keep that number going up, so like, you know, subscribe, comment, all that stuff. So, right, with all that being said, catch you guys next time.